All right, everybody, let's go ahead and take a look at the current state of the app, and then I will tell you what we'll be doing in this video. So let's say, for instance, somebody's skill or hobby is knitting while talking on the telephone. So stupid. So we did that animation, and we have this loading graphic, and right now it is communicating with OpenAI in order to generate some ideas. Each idea has a title with a description. So this looks like garbage, of course, and our goal now is to actually design a layout for this part in the next step. And so that means we're going to be working here within Figma in order to set it up properly for the Figma MCP server so that then we can use Cursor and Claude to communicate with that MCP server to get that layout realized in the browser. So here we are with the Figma document, which, by the way, you can grab in the description of this video. And this is kind of where we left off. You know, we have this design right here that we created. We have the loading section, and now we have to design that next screen once those ideas are presented. So I'm going to take this, hold Shift Alt, and just duplicate this. And we'll call this here, I'll just call this initial prompt results. Okay, because we're going to be prompting this thing multiple times. So now, the goal here, now remember, if we go back and we look at that list, right here we just have, you know, what was it, 12 different ideas, right? The ways that they can monetize this interest. Knitting podcast hosts, somebody who likes to talk. See, these are pretty good ideas. Audio knitting patterns, what the hell is that? Well, anyway, so we have to think to ourselves as UI designers, UI UX designers, putting your UI UX hat on, how do we want to present this? Because really, if they find something they like, for instance, like knitting audiobook narrator, all right, and it shows them the description right here. Well, obviously, that's not going to give them that much information. It just has a description, and it's like, okay, what now? So there's going to be a button that allows them to reestablish communication with OpenAI in order to learn more about how they can actually pursue this as a side gig of sorts. And the reason I didn't do that and include that with the initial prompt is because it would be massive. I mean, we have 12 different ideas, and we'd have to, generate a guide for each one of them. We don't want to do that. We want to tackle this in a multi-step approach. So how is this UI going to look? Are we just going to have 12 different cards sitting there with a button on each, or what? All right. So I kind of came up with an idea, and we're going to try to make this thing a reality. All right. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is take the height of this down just a bit, just to give ourselves a little bit more room to work with. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in the initial prompt, like whatever they entered in this text field right here. We're going to put that at the top. All right, so I'm going to paste this in, and then we're just going to put in a fake one, something like, quote, "I like playing live action role-playing games." Okay, that's probably many people's hobbies, whatever. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect that. We're going to bump this up maybe to like 36. And we're just going to center this with our alignment tools right there. And now that it's centered, underneath this, we're going to have kind of like a big card section in the middle. And we are not going to show all 12. Instead, I thought about this long and hard. I think it would make sense to have people filter through them in almost like a carousel format. That way they're not just glazing over and not taking each one seriously. I think that's a good UX pattern if we really want to try to get the most out of this service. So the way we'll do this is we already have some patterns established, like these cards down here with the borders. So I'm going to take one of those and just copy that and then just paste it right here. And now I'm going to go ahead and just kind of disconnect the auto layout that's applied to it right here. You just press that. Now there's no longer auto layout. Now we can kind of freely, work with it easier. I'm also going to go ahead and just delete these two items by double clicking into them. And then I kind of want this to go almost the full width of our layout. Because remember, the width of the layout right here is specified from the very left of the logo. Just imagine a column being there. And then to the very right of the navigation. So instead of going all the way out here on desktop to the very left and right, I'm going to bring it in just a bit. And then we'll be able to put to the left and right side of it little next and previous buttons to filter through each idea that it came up with. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead. Let's just take this type right here and just copy and paste it. And let's get it inside of here. And we're going to put in one of the titles for one of the 12 ideas, right? So one of them could be a LARP, live action role playing, right? Event organizer. Now, it's a good thing to talk about what's called typographic visual hierarchy. These two items, these pieces of text are the same exact size, right? So you're not sure where you should look first. Well, that's what typographic visual hierarchy is. I would say this is the most important thing, this title, not this one, because they already entered that, whatever. They're trying to look for ideas and how to make money on the side. So this is the first idea. This is the title of the first idea. So we are going to increase the font size. Notice how once we make it larger, your eye is more drawn to it. Okay, so we're going to put that right there. And then above it, we're going to put like a little tag of sorts. And it's going to say like idea 1 of 12. Idea 1 of 12. All right, again, typographic visual hierarchy. Does it make sense to make this little tag the same size? Hell no, it's going to be a lot smaller. So let's take a look at what we currently have with our type over here, our established type settings. So we have CTA type at a size 18, 20. Let's think if that's a good size. I think that's probably good right there. And then I also want to wrap it in a frame. Hit F. And then just wrap it around there. Now you can't see it because the frame by default doesn't have any type of fill or stroke, but we can add one. So we can add this stroke right here, and we'll give this a little bit of border radius, like say 3. And we'll put that right there. Now for the border radius as well, like right here, if we click on this, do we already have, okay, tag border corner radius. Let's use that. That makes sense. Now, what about the font size here? We already have the CTA type. Good. All right. So these small things matter in case you haven't followed along through the other videos, because we need to make sure everything's defined through styles and variables as much as possible, because they are tokenized information. It's context that's passed to the LLM. Very important. Okay. So now that we have that, idea 1 of 12, I think I actually might change the color of the type itself, where it says idea 1 of 12. It's not a very important piece of type, so I think we can change the type here if we double click into this. And let's click right here, and let's see if we can get away with this color. Actually, I want one that's a little bit brighter than that, so I'm going to disconnect that, and then we're going to push it up. There we go. So I'm going to save this as a new color variable called extra bright green, like that. Create variable. Now we have our variable attached. Okay, so far so good. Now we have to also account for the idea that some of these titles might be large and they may be multi-line. So for instance, LARP event organizer who makes money by whatever. Now you see, once we got to that second line, how the type got screwed the heck up. Well, that's bad. So you want to make sure that we have our line height set properly, and then that way that information is conveyed accurately to the MCP server. All right, so let's also take a look at the typographic styles. What size is this? 62? We don't have inside of our text styles anything that's close to that size. So we're going to create a new one. So we'll hit plus, and we're going to put in, I guess we'll call this card headline. Create style. Great. All right, so that's good. I actually don't want to have this multi-line though, but we are prepared for it now that we could possibly have it. And then we're going to put the description as well. And the description I'm talking about is this one right here, like where it says description, and then it's just a couple sentences. And that's what the AI was informed to return, just a few sentences. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and we'll copy this type, Shift Alt, drag down, and then let's go ahead, disconnect that, go back to our topography, and kind of see what makes sense. We have navigation a 2220. We don't want this to be bold though, so let's disconnect that one. Let's try CTA type 20. That's bold as well. Let's disconnect that. We may have to make just some new type here, like card title is probably, yeah. So let's go ahead and make a new one, a new text style once we get this dialed in. So again, this goes back to typographic visual hierarchy. How big should this type be? Well, it's a paragraph, so it shouldn't be that big. It should be significantly smaller than the headline, which is, I think, around 62 or so. So for me, let's try 22, but make it regular. All right. So in terms of a actual title, let's just go ahead and copy one of these descriptions, even though it doesn't really match up with the concept. So now let's put this provide, and let's also increase line height way too close. And you just kind of, for me, I just kind of like eyeballing it in terms of what makes the most sense. And what I will do is I will kind of get these kind of situated where I want them to be, what makes the most sense in terms of visual or vertical, I guess you could say white space or negative space between these elements. I think it makes sense to put these two more close together and then put this a little bit further away. Okay, I think that's pretty decent right around there. Don't worry, we're going to end up auto laying out all this stuff once we have it actually designed. When I have the final design, that's when I start adding auto layout, because then otherwise with auto layout many times in different manners, you're constricted in terms of how you can move things around. So now that we have that, we're going to kind of do like a skeleton little UI thing underneath here, because remember, the only two pieces of information that we get for each one on this initial prompt is the title and a description of a way that they can monetize their idea. So for us, underneath here, I want to have a little Rive animation where it's a skeleton UI. So if you don't know what a skeleton UI is, you're about to find out. So I'm just taking, I hit O on my keyboard for the ellipse tool, hit Shift Alt, left click, drag out a perfect circle. And then I'm going to give this a color, the same background color, except make it slightly lighter. Now let's see if we actually have a color that makes sense here for that purpose, something slightly lighter. No, that's a little bit too, so we're gonna have to make another color style here. I think I kind of like that. It's a very low opacity. It's like a watermark, which is what I want. Before I add that to the styles though, let's keep on designing out the little skeleton UI. And I'll describe what this is in a second. So now I'm going to take just the rectangle tool and I'm going to drag out maybe something like a little title right here. These are supposed to emulate steps, by the way, like step 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's grab that same color. Let's bump up the corner radius to something really large. All right. And then we'll duplicate it, Shift Alt, left click, drag down. Maybe this goes all the way out. And maybe these both are the same size. So I'm making sure the height is even on the top and bottom. Okay, so now what I'll do is drag this here to the left, making sure everything is kind of even. There we go. So I'll group that up, duplicate it one more time. Okay, with that, now what we can do is add a button that is overlaid on top of it. And this button is going to say generate guide. All right, so that's how they're going to be able to drill down into this even more so. So I'm going to hit type, or T rather, for the type tool. I'm going to put generate guide. Now for this type style, the CTA type might be good. I may want to make that a little bit larger though. So let's go back here. CTA type, card title. Actually, card title is actually pretty good. So probably naming these a little bit different convention would make more sense, but that's fine. Let's hit the frame tool, wrap this in a button. All right, and the button will have a fill of white. We really want this to stand out. So visual hierarchy. We want this button to stand out. It's an actionable item. Therefore, we're going to make it really stand out well. So now the fill for the type, which they're both white, so that's why you don't see the type anymore, will be, let's see if we can take this one. Yeah, I think I like that color. It's called primary color. It's the blue color. I mean, the green background color. That will work out just fine. We'll take both of these layers, hold shift, or rather just select frame 2. And again, we're going to have to name all these layers here. I kind of like doing that stuff at the end. And we're going to specify, let's see here, an auto layout. Centered up, everything's good here by default. And then give it a little bit of corner radius, maybe like size 3. Now again, let's go back, size 4 rather. Tag corner radius will work just fine there. Okay, so generate guide. Let's right click and go to plugins, go to Iconify, and let's type in for AI, and you'll see this right here, that icon. Let's drag that in, drag it into the auto layout to the left, and then give it for the selection colors. We're going to come to libraries and make it primary color right there. All right. So now let's take a look, one last look at the size of this button, maybe increase the height a little bit by holding Alt, left click and drag down. And we're pretty good. Okay, so I like that. We're gonna add another piece of type underneath it. Now hit your bracket keys if you need to get to the front or the very top of the layers. Right, double click this and we're going to specify in here just a little disclaimer that says this will provide you, let me zoom up, you with every bling worthy step required to pull this off. Okay, so let's center that, and I do want to make this smaller type. So let's see, we got that. Actually, I think that would probably work fine. I don't like the line height on this, so I think what I'm going to do is let's go out of here, and if you click anywhere outside, you'll see all the styles. So CTA type, I want to adjust the line height. It says 20. Let's try 24, 20, or 26. You can see that it's updating right here. All right, and then we could probably put that like right around there. Now we'll take both of them, holding shift, move this up. Okay. Now let's do those little buttons where it says next idea over here and then previous idea over here. Oh, this doesn't look good, by the way, because it's not centered up. Let's see, is that in a auto layout? No, it's not. That would be why. So add that in auto layout. See if that looks for the side. There we go. Okay, this is looking pretty solid right here. Let's continue on with more type. So I'm going to take this type over here and just paste it on the outside, drag it over here. This color for temporarily, let's disconnect this. Let's just make it white so we can see it. This will say prev idea, as in previous. Hit frame. Let's add a button around it. This button, we're going to have a background color. Let's see. I think we're going to make it slightly lighter. So let's choose this one. And then this is going to be, the type is going to be, let's see if that is good or not. Okay, let's real quickly add the tag corner radius right here, which is 4. And I do want to real quickly, do we have a right arrow anywhere? No, we don't. So let's go to Iconify, go into here, type in right. I'll just take the first one and then drag it. Oh, that's not auto layout yet. So let's add auto layout onto that and then drag it to the left. Now this time I'm going to simply rotate it, holding shift. There we go. So for the selection colors, let's see here. fill. Oopsie, that's not the right one. There we go. So now we go to fill and select that. Now one thing I want to do is take this, reduce this right there. I'm trying to get everything evened up as much as possible. You want to have equal white space on the left and right. So I'm just kind of adjusting these so that it's nice and kind of tidied up. There we go. All right. I might actually want to have a little bit larger corner radius for these. So let's adjust this. 6. I think that's better. So we have another one called inner or text field. No. What was it called? Inner corner radius of 6. There we go. All right. So we have that. Let's duplicate this. And now we just have to do next. So let's take this, double click, and then just right click and drag it to the right. And then now we can adjust that. Change this to next. Now let's fix this stuff right here. There we go. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if like we're not on a desktop? Like this will get squashed, especially on like a phone. That's responsive design. So one of the things that we'll have to dictate, and by the way, this text is not readable enough, so we would need to make this maybe a little bit darker. So let's detach the primary color, because we don't have a darker one right now, and maybe come down here to that color. So now that we have that, let's add this, and we'll call this dark primary. All right, now we'll take this and do the same thing. This will be dark primary. Is that it? Okay. And now it's all screwed up. Why is that not working? Well, let me see. Oh, that's why. I didn't do the right one. Okay, sorry about that. We have to go back to just hit plus here. No, not plus. We take this and then hit plus. Sorry about that. This will be dark primary. Now, the reason it's not allowing me to change that, what happened? I think I hit something by accident. Okay, so the reason it's not allowing me to change that because that already exists in the color styles. Or the variables rather. So if I click the variables and I come over here, we're going to right click and delete that dark primary. Now we can come back here, click this, hit plus, call it dark primary. There we go. So now we come in and we select this. We're going to detach the old instance, which doesn't exist anymore, and now choose dark primary. Okay. So now we can go back and switch these as well. So this goes detached. Click on this, libraries, dark primary, and then same thing here, detach, libraries, dark primary. Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Trying to think if I like this or not. If we can take both of these, we can start making maybe a little bit of adjustments on the size here. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Again, we may have to experiment with this. I'm not sure if I like the placement of these actual buttons. But what would be really cool though is to utilize, GreenSock animation platform to create an animation when we click next idea and previous idea and all that good stuff. Okay, so there's going to be a screen after this. Let's move this up. And that screen will be once this has been generated. You know, this little guide, this in-depth guide. And that screen is going to depend on a bunch of, a different number of things. But I think before we get to that part, it's going to make more sense to kind of slow down here and make sure everything is named up and we tidy this portion up and we get it all ready to rock. So there's no, auto layouts applied to this layout here or this layout here with, this is 3 columns, this is 1 column, this is the middle, and this is, so we need to set this up correctly if we wanted to knock this layout out. So what we'll do is, the way I do this is I'm going to approach this in multiple steps, and we start with this smaller steps first. So for instance, this is already in auto layout, but notice it's called frame 1 over here. Again, let's call this step tag. All right. Then we have this element, LARP event organizer. Again, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to double click this and name it. Name the layer to something that makes sense. Idea title. There we go. That doesn't change the text here. It just changed the title, and then that way this does provide context for the MCP server. So we want to name the layers. This will be card description. All right. So now we have these 3 things. It would make sense. So given the fact that we have this one here and then this one with a certain amount of white space between them, and then we have this type and this type with even more, we're going to approach this in 2 different auto layouts. The first one will be this tag in the title. So we select both, click the auto layout icon up here. All right, that's good. And then we select that auto layout plus this right here beneath it, and we will add another auto layout. All right, so now we have the ability to control this distance, but also we can double click into here and nail this distance as well. Okay, so let's take a look at the overall frame 6 it's called. Okay, so before we get to that, we have to figure out how we're going to deal with this section down here. So I wanted to use Rive in order to create an animation of these little things right here, and there'll be kind of like a mask where it kind of glows. We've all seen some of these, like on Facebook, like a skeleton UI that animates a little bit with like this mask effect on it. It's kind of hard to describe, but we're going to use Rive for that. So this whole section, this whole rectangle right here, from here to here, will be a Rive element, and then seated on top of it in HTML with absolute positioning, centering it, of course, will be these 2 elements. It will be the generate guide button with this description. So let's take a look at this, what's called frame 2. So let's just call this generate guide CTA, call to action. And then this right here is just going to be a guide disclaimer. Okay, now we'll take both of those and we will auto layout those. Okay, so next up, these 3 elements, like I said, that will ultimately be inside of Rive. I'm not going to include it because it's not going to be created through HTML and CSS. We're going to do that ourselves in Rive. So we don't need to even include this when we select this artboard and tell it to make all this stuff. So what I'll do is probably just replicate this, Shift Alt, or just take it in Control D. And I'm going to leave this one here like this, except this one at the top, I'm going to delete these. All right. And then what I can do is take a frame, left click and drag it all the way out. So now it is how it's basically a parent container of this element. So I'm going to call this, where it says frame 7, we'll just call this CTA section. And then I'll just call this one skeleton UI. All right. There we go. So now we take this and we take that, those 2 auto layouts, and then we create an auto layout out of those. All righty. Hopefully you're kind of getting the point now. Then what I'll do is I'll take the overall container with that frame 8, which, by the way, let's go ahead and name these. So this is, we'll call this idea container inner. Up here is going to be idea header. All right. Now we have this called card. So I think card would be fine for the name. Then we have to take this button this button, those three elements are all selected. Now, before we do this, let's go ahead and name this. This is going to be previous button. And then this one will be called next button. Okay. Now we take those three and we create an auto layout. Okay. We can center that up. There we go. Now this whole thing has auto layout applied to it. All right, so now what we want to do is we're going to take this initial prompt results section, replicate it, and we are going to design the screen that shows up after the guide has been generated. So I'm going to double click this and just delete it. Okay. So now we have this skeleton UI section. We're going to rename this here into something else. Actually, trying to think how I want to approach this. I think what I want to do is grab this one where it says idea container inner, and we will get rid of that auto layout section right there. All right, so if we drill down into here, let's see here, skeleton UI. What we want to put at the top here is the first thing that I wanted to generate is going to be like the earnings potential, and then also like a competitive score. And we'll put those at the top. So I'm going to say earnings potential as kind of like a tag. All right, and this color, let's come over here, is going to need to be the brighter green, the extra bright green style that we created. And then I'm going to duplicate that. And actually, we might just duplicate this up here. Oopsie. There we go. And we're going to put in 500. Okay, that's a little bit too large. 5K. This might be like a per month type thing. Let's get rid of that type style. That's way too large. Let's see if we have one that's of suitable size. 26. No, we want something larger than that. Again, I'm looking at visual hierarchy. This needs to be larger than that. So we're going to come back to this. And one more time, give a check over here. We have 62, 20, nothing larger than 26 in our custom style. So let's eyeball this. I think a size right around there, 38 would be good. Kind of, yeah, that's good. All right, and then what we'll do is add that to a type style. So I'll call this, I'll just call this medium type. Good. And then we're going to put a tag underneath it, duplicate it. Per month. Per montha. What is that? All right. And let's disconnect that. Come to our type styles. Size 18. Might want to try something different. Yeah, the tag type. That's the one that we want. And we'll put this like right there. Now, I like to zoom out every now and then just to kind of get an idea of what things look like. Maybe put that down, just a bit more white space between description and the start of this section. Okay, next thing I will do is we'll take, we'll create our, what do you call, our auto layout with those two elements selected, and then select this element as well, and then create another auto layout. Okay, and then we'll duplicate this. And then the next one will be kind of like a competitive score. So this will be based on like a score out of 1 from 10, 1 being like not very competitive, and then 10 being extremely competitive. We'll ask it to see if it can generate that for us. And I don't need a tag here. It would make sense to put a little question mark there, you know, to help people understand what is the competitive score. But for now, I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, that looks good. Next thing I'll do is we're going to make this a little larger. Double click into here, pull this down. Now I'll probably want these not to be centered like that. I want to keep them at the top. So we could just do that. And then I could push these down. Let's see here. So I think I'll just leave them at the top actually for now. Like that. Move this up here. Oh, this wasn't added to auto layout yet. That's just kind of for a reference down here. All right, for now I'm just going to leave it like that. And then we're going to have underneath it the actual step-by-step guide section. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and take this tag up here. Paste it over here. Let's see, let's go out of here. This section should be its own auto layout. There we go. This should be tied to the height. There we actually no. There, I'm getting rid of skeleton UI. There we go. So this is in auto layout. Is this in auto layout? Yes, it is. Okay, so that's good right there. The height of this should be, okay, so this doesn't have auto layout. Now it needs auto layout. There we go. Okay. All right, great. So the next part we'll include in that auto layout that we just created, but for now we're going to work outside of it. So this is going to be a tag and it's going to say step 1, but it's going to be styled differently. It's not going to have a stroke. It will have a fill. And the fill color is going to be this. And then the inner color for the text, select that, is going to be the darker green right here. Okay, so that says step 1. Then we will take our type right here, copy it, just come outside of it. There we go. This will simply say establish event framework. So this will be the title of step 1. Let's get rid of that. That was size 62. Let's see if we have a more suitable. No, 26 is too small. Let's try, let's break that. There we go. Medium type. That'll work. All right. So now that we have that, that's good. Let's take this right here, the description, paste that, just drag that sucker down. There we go. Now, oh, by the way, this didn't have a style applied for the type. So we're going to do, nope. Let's add our own. Let's just call this large paragraph. So we'll add that. Now I think I'm going to make this type a little bit smaller because these steps might have a lot of text. So size 18, reduce the line height slightly, and we'll add this, and we'll just call this paragraph. So we'll add it. Paragraph. Great. Now take both of these, auto layout, take this, auto layout. All right. So we can move this up. And then we will duplicate this. These will be just a few different steps essentially. And then underneath that, we're going to have another piece of type that says show all 10 steps, or however many steps it comes up with. And we will use our arrow, or our little right arrow, copy that, paste this. It is going to be white. There we go. Oh no, changed the wrong thing. There we go. Break that. We're going to choose white. There we go. And we're going to right click and just rotate that downwards. Take both of these elements, this and this, Why is that messed up? There we go. Now it's centered in its container. There. It's getting hard to select these. There we go. Now we'll go ahead and add that. Okay, show all 10 steps. Now let's see if is that a good size? I think we could probably adjust that to something higher, like just card title. There we go. And we'll center this up. All right, that looks good to me. And then we will have, let's see here. Underneath this, we'll have maybe some YouTube thumbnails that pull from the API that have to do with various topics, you know, maybe these various steps or something that have to do, you know, with this whole niche. Maybe we'll pull a number of YouTube videos. There's so many other things you could do. You can integrate other APIs from like hiring services, like if they want to hire people to help them or whatever. Yeah, so there's a lot that we could come up with. So the YouTube section down here is really just going to be cards, you know. So what I'm probably going to do is just take a frame and just make it empty for now. I don't think it really matters. I think we can probably nail this a little bit later, where it has like a YouTube thumbnail here, here, and here. So maybe there's going to be 3 columns and maybe like 2 rows, maybe 6 different videos it'll pull from, where, you know, they can just kind of learn more about whatever this is and learn more about the industry. I think that would be cool. So now what I'll do is just call this YouTube container for that frame. And now what we need to do is kind of get things situated here. So if we take these 3, we should put those into an auto layout. All right, it says frame 18. So let's adjust this. We'll put this, we'll call this steps container. All right, this is going to be step 1. And really, we don't need to put these other steps, like step 2 and step 3. But for our own visual reference, I'm going to leave them there. And again, I mean, we probably should make sure all these are correctly named. So frame 13, this would be like a step header. So what we can do is just delete these, duplicate those. Now those have the right as well, the right information. All right, so that is tied up. Now we want to take this step container and put this into that idea container inner section. So I'll just throw this right into there. Now it's putting it at the top, so we can left click and just drag this down. There we go. Now it's underneath where it needs to go. Then probably, let's see here. This show all 10 steps section. Let's maybe throw this. Let's name it. We'll just call this show more CTA. Call this icon. All right. This whole section can go inside of this down here, I believe, steps container. So where was that? Show more CTA, put it into steps container, except put it at the bottom. So drag it down here. Uh-oh. Let's just literally put it right there. And then go back to steps container and make sure we got centered up. Okay. I might want to, after, put a line divider right here, separate things out just a little bit more. But we can do that after the fact. There we go. Kind of separate it out a little bit more. And then down here, we have this empty container. All right, where it says YouTube container. And it would make sense to put that at the bottom of idea container. So now we put that just, let's see here, right here. There it is at the bottom there. Okay. All right, I think that here is pretty good. Kind of just checking everything here. So the height of this container should be, let's see, is this a auto layout? And I don't think it is. This one is. So height is set to hug, okay? And this one here, add auto layout, and it's set to hug by default, I believe. Yeah, perfect. All right, so there we go. That is what will show up, and we'll have all this stuff animate in, of course, once they essentially generate an idea, or generate the guide rather. Okay, I had stepped away from the computer and came back, and I did not like the design where we had these on the upper, right and left. I decided to move them above the card like this, in this manner. So now that we have that, by the way, if you were, following along with the previous section, I just right-clicked and ungrouped that previous auto layout and just basically turned it off. And that way I could freely just move these buttons up on the left and right. With that selected, we'll just go ahead and right-click, or not right-click rather, but click on the auto layout option right here, and then select this one down here and add auto layout as well. Okay, so now that we have that, now we're ready to rock for the next step, which is the Figma MCP server and actually getting this realized in the browser. And then we'll also knock out this little animation in Rive once we get that working. And then these previous and next idea buttons, we'll get that working with the live data as well between all the cards that it generates.